So, I was going to make a video on this yesterday, but I was simply too sleepy. So, I ended up sleeping over it and decided to do it the next day. This is going to be my last video on Tribbie and Mydei kit value. And the next time you see me making a video like this, it will be on Casterus and Anoxa instead, and around over a week, right? So let's get straight into it. I will only be going up to E1 S1 for both of these characters because that's where most of their value lies, right? And that's also what most people could probably afford if they like skipped a patch or two. It's a lot more understandable than going like E2 or further than E2 when E2 isn't even that crazy for either of these characters, right? So let's get into it. Tribbie at E0 S0. What do I think her value is out of 10? I give her an 8, right? I saw Hersher Sentience. Shout out to him. I like his videos. Give her a 7 out of 10. I'm giving her an 8 out of 10 because of how much of a general buffer she is. She has res pen and vulnerability, which are two things that literally every single type of damage in this game can take advantage of. There is not a single team, whether it be break, HP scaling, dot, it doesn't matter. Every single team in this game can take advantage of res pen plus vulnerability. And on top of that, she also does her own damage, right? Now, she's not that crazy at E0S0 in her own niche, right? She is not a Xiaoqiu to Acheron. She is not a Ruan Mei to the break teams. She is not a Robin to the follow-up attackers. She doesn't have that big presence in her own niche at E0S0, right? I'll say it how it is. She is better than other options. However, it is not that big of a difference like it is for some of these other niche supports that we've had in the past, right? However, because of her general buffing ability and also the fact that she's like the only Harmony who really does her own attacks, I think there's enough value in that of itself. And at the end of the day, she is a limited Harmony, right? Sometimes you might need to have a new Harmony for a new future DPS, or you might not have enough Harmony slots on your account and you're missing some on possibly your second team. You can always benefit from having another limited Harmony on your account, which you can just never go wrong with, right? Now, for E0S1 Tribbie, I'm giving her 8.5. It doesn't go up all that much higher because of how good her synergy is with DDD. If you have a decent superimposition DDD like S3 or higher, I'd say getting her signature is probably a waste, and it would be much better spent going for her E1 instead, which I'll get into a little bit. Her signature gives a party-wide crit damage buff. It gives her a crit damage buff for herself as well, and significantly better so she's able to spam her ult more often. Now, it for sure is nice and it for sure is good. However, I don't think it's alone enough to push her up to like 9 out of 10 in my opinion. I think it just takes her to 8.5 instead of 9 out of 10, as the E1 and E1 S1 combo is significantly better than just alone S1, right? Which brings us to E1 S0. Tribbie E1 S0 is a 10 out of 10 on the value, in my opinion. She has the most broken E1 in the game, hands down. I won't listen to anyone who tries to disagree with me. It is the most broken E1 in the entirety of the game. I've already seen a few videos on an E0 Tribbie versus an E1 for Herda against 5 mobs on field, and it over doubled her single target damage towards the highest HP mob on field, doing 15 to 16% damage to Flame Reaver to doing 30% or more to his health bar. It is completely fucking insane how much of a difference it is for blast and AoE DPSs against high HP bosses when you use an E1 Tribbie. It is so good, right? So E1 Tribbie is a 10 out of 10 in value for me. And then obviously E1 S1 is also going to be 10 out of 10 because she can now spam her ult more. She gives her teammates more crit damage, which makes the true damage buff obviously bigger because they're doing more damage overall. The combination of the two is obviously the absolute honeymoon, right? Like, that's what you want. Hoyo is trying to sell E1s and S1s lately a lot more than E2s, which is understandable. However, it does suck that they're this good. I know a lot of people out there are going to fall for the bait, but do keep in mind, guys, these E1s and S1s are by no means necessary. Okay, at least for now, they are not necessary. They are very, very nice value. However, something you have to think about is that if these characters are getting this nice a value in their Eidolons and Lycones, then future characters will likely get even better value in their Eidolons and Lycones. So you're not really missing out on anything by not pulling E1 or S1. However, it would still benefit you quite a bit if you decided to pull on it. But do please keep in mind, these things are by no means necessary to pull on, right? Next, I have Mydei. This is probably sorry for my cough there. I drank something cold. This is probably gonna get me into some shit, because every time I make any video about Mydei, there's either one side of the group where people are kind of overestimating him way too much, and then there's another side where people severely underestimate him, even compared to me, even though I don't think I underestimate him at all. However, I'm just going to say it how it is, in my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Feel free to agree, right? Mydei at E0S0 is a 6 out of 10 on the value list for me. Now, the reason for this is he actually is pretty strong in his best in slot team. I'd say he's currently the third strongest DPS behind Aglaia and Herda. However, he has a similar issue to Aglaia, where he is incredibly unfree-to-play friendly, but honestly, it's even worse in his case, because at least Aglaia can like semi-synergize with like a DDD spamming Ting Yun or something. These HP scalers don't have a single dedicated HP support, and they really badly want like a Sunday to make up for that, right? However, your Sunday is most likely going to be on a different team if you already pulled for him, or if you do have Sunday, hey, congrats, right? But one thing I will say, try to make sure you have a Sunday if you're planning on making Mydei your best in slot DPS. Get him on his rerun or whatever, and then run it alongside RMC, and you should be in the clear, right? As for sustains, he very obviously has the best in slot being Huohuo. I don't know if Luocha becomes a best in slot with his E2, but I'm not talking about E2 here. E1 and under, he should be best in slot with Huohuo, I believe, because of his skill point positivity in his Vendetta state. Now, E0S0... the reason I gave it a 6 out of 10 outside of the also free-to-play friendliness with the teammates, even compared to Aglaia, is, once again, he's obviously weaker than the newer DPSs, so he doesn't even make it up for damage, and he also has auto battle. You cannot control this guy, and his animations are worse than the newer DPSs. That might be a lot more of a nitpick, which is understandable. However, having worse animations, worse damage, and having worse gameplay is like, what the fuck were they thinking when they made this man, right? So do keep in mind that he has auto battled pretty much the entire time, and you almost can never control him, and this might be detrimental in certain scenarios where you're probably going for lower cycle clears, right? If you don't care about that, completely understandable. However, this character's ceiling isn't that high compared to, let's say, Aglaia, right? Aglaia is pretty unfree-to-play friendly and requires quite a good amount of relic investment for her team to perform as optimally as possible. But the thing is, Aglaia has one of the highest ceilings in the entirety of the game, if not the highest ceiling, right? However, Mydei's ceiling really isn't that high at all at E0S0. So he doesn't have many redeeming qualities for the unredeeming qualities that he has, which kind of sucks. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm giving him a 6 out of 10 at E0S0. E0S1, 7.5 out of 10. For those who don't know, his Lycone is an absolute fucking massive damage boost. Like, the man basically can clear 0 cycles with a sustain in his own MOC with E0S1 in his best in slot team. That might not sound that crazy because Galea can do the same thing. However, the point here to be made is that his light cone massively increases his overall damage by like 20 to 30% in most scenarios. So his signature versus his free-to-play light cone, absolutely a world's difference, right? So E0S1, he becomes a lot better of a character. I'd even dare to say his light cone is quite similar in value to Herda's light cone, right? Herda's is like 10 to 15% than the free-to-play option, which, yes, is worse in damage. However, you get a skill point refund on the ult, which is quite important. So I'd say Herda's light cone is about as important, if not slightly less important, compared to how important Mydei's light cone is for him, right? Next, we have E1S0. For people who don't know what the E1 does, it makes his God Slayer be God AoE, and it makes every single target on field take the primary target multiplier. And they even buffed this even further in his V4 to where now, instead of just everyone taking the primary target multiplier, it also does 30% more damage overall, right? So the E1 now is making his God Slayer be God AoE, making everyone take the primary target multiplier, and making everyone on top of that take 30% more damage. It is a really, really good E1. However, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. It is worse than the light cone because Mydei does not do God Slayer be God all that often, meaning the light cone's overall damage increase applying to any attack he does at all overall ends up adding to more damage done than his E1, which brings me to the next part of Mydei, the last part that I want to talk about for Mydei, E1S1 Mydei. I am giving him a 9 out of 10. That is pretty high. However, it's for a good reason. The synergy between his E1 plus S1 is really fucking good. Okay, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is really, really good. His E1 making his God Slayer be God AoE, plus making everyone take primary target damage, plus 30% damage increase, alongside the light cone that is making him do 20 to 30% more damage overall alongside it. It is incredibly fucking broken. Okay, I'm gonna say it as lightly as possible. It is incredibly broken. I think the only person who beats Mydei at E1S1 in their best in the slot team could be a Galea, right? But I honestly think it's close, and Herda is weaker than Mydei at E1S1 in my opinion, until she hits that E2. Her E2 is just absolutely diabolical, right? So do keep in mind, E1S1 Mydei is for sure one of the strongest DPSs in the game, as his God Slayer be God just does absolutely massive amounts of fucking damage. I've seen people run him sustainless. In almost every case scenario, he's usually ran sustain because he could still 0 cycle with a sustain. However, I saw an E1S1 Mydei sustainless with E1 Tribbie, RMC, and I think Sunday, right? And this man, I think he did over 3 million with a God Slayer be God in his MOC. Over 3 million with one enhanced attack. This isn't including any of his other attacks, right? So keep that in mind. E1S1 Mydei goes pretty fucking wild, right? So that's going to be the video for me. I think Tribbie has great overall value. I think Mydei has decent value at E0S0. However, he really starts to pop off at higher investment like E0S1 or especially E1S1. And for Tribbie, I'd recommend, if you can afford it, right? It's understandable if you want to instead get a new character, 100%. I understand that. However, if you can afford it, E1 Tribbie is looking to be a quite good investment for pretty far down the line, so long as there continues to be Blast or AoE endgame content. So That's all I wanted to make for this video. Hope you have a good day. Hope you have a good night. Peace.